come in, but I think it's at 7:05. I should kick off now. Today again, by the way, thank you for coming in. I should say that again. Thank you for signing in. It is a great delight, and I really intentionally made this discussion today a little bit shorter. In the past, we would have a discussion. I'll talk for about 30 minutes, say 25 minutes or thereabout. But today I made it shorter because I really look forward to having feedback, having input, discussions, and that's largely based on the fact that I've been getting some feedback from other folks, so they're encouraging. There's a need for us to discuss more. Anyway, back to today's chat. It will be on breaking forth, how to unleash from a cycle of failure. And of course, you all know me. I'm Calypso Sangaya. I often say the PhD is not a part of my name, so please don't call me PhD. I thought to add this information that, of course, this is a discussion that is not clinical advice, so it's void of all liability. What does it mean to break forth? We break forth. There's a necessity to break forth when we are stuck. A person who is not stuck doesn't have a need to break forth. And this picture really gives a good depiction of what it means to be stuck. You see, Portia, beautiful, of great value, yet stuck and unable to move. And this represents that represents a situation where we often find ourselves. And to be stuck means, of course, that we can't move forward. We can't move in the direction that we desire. And it could be emotionally, it could be physically, it could be psychologically. And I would like to add that most of the time, when we are stuck, it is in one area of our lives or the other. And this is true for everyone. Even experts in a certain domain often find themselves stuck in another domain. So as we discuss, I often, like I say in the past videos, I'm mentioning now again, I think it's necessary to mention the fact that the discussion is not to provide solutions necessarily, but to bring us to a place where we can think of our own situations, sort of look at ourselves in the mirror and see where we are at, use the principles that are suggested within this discussion and see how we can apply them to ourselves. That's basically the essence of this discussion. Again, to move into a little bit more details about being stuck, it doesn't mean a momentary state of, I'll call it being stuck. It's not necessarily a situation whereby you're having a bad mood because of a scenario. No, when we talk of being stuck, it is in a situation, we're referring to a situation whereby, for instance, you feel worthless. Some people find themselves stuck in a job, can't move forward, can't move backward. Some are just stuck in a business idea and they can't seem to find a way around it. I won't say consulting, but I do provide business advice, especially online investing with stocks. And occasionally I do come across folks who find it difficult to move forward. Say they've learned about one group sector of a company, and then they find it difficult to move forward. Excuse me, I'm going to stop video because I don't want to capture other videos. Thank you very much for signing in. Somebody just signed in a moment ago. So yes, talking about being stuck. So it is in different domains of our lives. And some people find themselves stuck in a relationship. I'll talk a little bit more about this as we continue because this is an area that is very critical. And I put this picture here just to, again, illustrate what it means to be stuck in a sector, in a domain of our lives. Marriage is one that is typically very difficult. And I mean, for students, of course, you can be stuck in a situation whereby you can't find a solution for a problem. Say an assignment is given and you don't have a way to go around it and you feel overwhelmed by it. I mean, if you've been a student, I've been a student most of my life. This is very common. where you have an assignment that you know or you perceive that it will be difficult, and just the thought of getting to do the assignment is like, don't go there. It brings chills to the body. And sometimes we are stuck because of lack of purpose, where we don't have a vision for life. We don't have a clue about what we want. And so we find ourselves in a cycle. And again, these are just examples to throw out there to help us sort of follow the discussion and see where we are at in life. And it's Dr. John Maxwell who said there are 3 levels of living. There is survival, there is success living, and then there's significance living. And man's pursuit should be to have a significant life. We have the example, of course, of Jesus Christ. So a significant life is the life that is lived not just for one's own interests, but for one to please or to lift up other people, to please other people, where the desire is to please someone else. And so most of the time when we are stuck, we revolve around the area of survival, where we are, the typical life in the Western world: go to job, come back, pay bills, and then you get caught up in a situation whereby you're thinking, how am I going to get out of this cycle? Again, like I said, I provide business counsel, I provide advice on occasionally taxes, because it has to do with business, and clarity of vision and purpose. And it is a fairly common problem, especially again in the area of relationship. We find that we are stuck in one area or the other. And the concept of being stuck or finding it difficult to break through is, in my opinion, it hinges on one aspect: the lack of clarity. The lack of clarity. When we lack clarity, we can't focus. When we lack clarity, we can't focus. So if you take an example, I remember talking to a fellow who, had he was doing his studies and for the PhD. And what is typical with PhD studies or PhD research is the feeling of being stuck. You get to a point where you feel like you should give up the PhD, or you feel like you shouldn't, because you find it difficult to continue. There's a problem that you can't seem to surpass. So he had this problem, and he called me into his office. And of course, the problem was I could tell that he lacked clarity on the definition of the problem. Sometimes we are in a mess because we don't know exactly, we can't pinpoint what is wrong. And sometimes it's lack of clarity on the potential solutions that are available. And instead of pursuing clarity, most of the time we are stuck on analyzing I call it the anatomy of the problem. So anatomy analysis of that same problem. So instead of pursuing opportunities for solution, we get stuck on the problem. And this is very true always. If you meet someone who tells you about their problem, and the next time you meet them, they only tell you how bad their problem is, they lack clarity. I can guarantee on that. They lack clarity. They lack clarity on, if not the nature of the problem, they lack clarity on the solution. And if you don't have clarity, you can't focus, or better put, you focus on the wrong things. They get caught up in a cycle of analyzing the problem. And more often than not, like this picture indicates, the individual will be stuck in the past. Stuck in the past. As I talk about this, it brings to mind my own experiences. I remember for a few people who know me, for instance, Wano would definitely concur to this, that when we're back in Cameroon, I probably went to the US the most times. I had visa denials the most, probably like 10 or 15, no, 12 or 15. There were 12 or 15 denials that I had, prepare an application and go. And what happened, I'll go and be refused the visa, and then come back, prepare another application, even had scholarships, and I was refused the visa. And I found myself in this cycle, and I could tell, if you met me at that point, I could tell you exactly what is wrong with the US Embassy, what is wrong with their procedure, how biased it is. I had an analysis of the problem and didn't have a clue about and lost clarity on how to solve the potential solutions. And as I mentioned this, please, again, this talk is not to come and just give a lecture like it is in a classroom. But the essence is to help us delve into ourselves and examine within us which area is it in you that needs clarity, that needs to be redefined. In which area are you stuck? Better put. Some people, it's just they talk about, it's very common nowadays, talk about the potential business possibilities, the ones they have tried, the ones they want to try, and they have a stack of them. To some, it's just career, a definition of where they want to go, which keeps changing all the time. And again, this is not to push anybody. It is just to help us sort of, look into this, look at our own lives and see how this discussion reflects in us and see potential solutions as we discuss along. I thought to highlight, apart from the fact that there's often an issue with clarity and lack of focus, at individual levels, at the granular level, most of the time, people get stuck because they are scared of the truth about a situation. This is true with relationships. If you see, I mean, I can give you the examples. Of course, I've not taken the liberty. I will not take the liberty to share people's private experiences, but I've come across quite a few people who are stuck in their relationships. They can't move forward, can't move backward. They talk about how bad it is. They can't even manage it, but they can't move forward. They can't move backward. They are even scared to go to delve into the problem to really see what it is, because if there's no clarity on what exactly the problem is, it begins to change on a daily basis. Most of the time we get stuck because we don't know our strengths. The problem comes, and this is particularly true for students. You have an assignment. I once gave an example of a student who told me that, Senior Calypso, I can't do math because I don't know math. My dad did not know math. My mom did not know math. He gave me a string of family members who didn't know math. And this was not a reflection of his true strength. Rather, it's a collection of his inability that somehow he had been passed on from generations, apparently. And sometimes we get stuck because we are living based on others' expectation, other people's expectations. If I live my life based on what others are passing on to me or are expecting from me, more often than not, I'll find that I won't be able to meet their expectations, so I get stuck in the middle. Again, I've seen this in relationships where an individual is unable to move, to make the next step, whether to let go of a relationship or to engage in it fully because of other people's expectations. A very, very important one, and this will tie to the solutions as I'll mention a little later on, is the lack of adequate knowledge and research. This is very true with people who are considering starting up businesses, or who have started a business or a career and they can't move forward. They find that they are stuck because oftentimes there's lack of adequate knowledge of what is necessary within the given area. Like I mentioned to you, I remember having this fellow complain when I was, in fact, I was a postdoc and the PhD student. He was complaining. Apparently, he had this they call it research block. He was stuck for over a week. And when I found out, I took him into a room, and because I discovered that the problem was lack of clarity. He knew the problem so well, but he didn't know how to get out of it because he had not focused on getting out, on the potential solutions to get out of it. He didn't do his research very well. So I had to get him into a room and then, on a chalkboard board and explain and look at what potential solutions there are. Sometimes it's just a fear of change, fear of the unknown. And so we are stuck at one level. This is true for jobs, again, for family, for relationships, for jobs where because we find ourselves comfortable and we are afraid to make any change because of the potential consequences. What if it doesn't happen? What if there's no breakthrough? And then we get stuck in that cycle. How do you break out of that system? We've analyzed the problem. How do you break out? I said the first thing to do is to be honest to yourself. Be honest to yourself about what the problem is. Be honest to yourself. Identify the fact that you are blocked. Identify the fact that you can't make a move. In the psalm it says, why are you cast down, O my soul? Hope thou in God. The writer, King David, identified that he had a problem. He was cast down. And the solution is to hope in God. If you can't be honest to your own self, you'll be revolving around the same cycle. The next step is to ask for help. Once you identify that you have a problem, think of a solution, ask for help. The Bible says, by multitude of counsel, a man's ways are established. How do you get counsel? Seek counsel. Acquire knowledge about the area. If you want to delve into an area of business, if you want to delve into a study area, and you don't acquire adequate knowledge, you are guaranteed to be stuck. You're guaranteed to be stuck. A third one, the next one is uplifting one's own self. Self-perception is a very important attribute. It's a very important value to uphold in order to succeed in life. The Bible says, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of a good report, naming these things. They say, think on these things. The things that will uplift you, will put your mind in a place where you can think clearly, you can have clarity of purpose and clarity of vision. And again, like I mentioned earlier on, you see, it's hard to, as I talk, it's hard to pinpoint one and continue with it because we are different points in our lives in terms of, for lack of a better term, I'll say success. Some of us are barely surviving. Some of us are successful by some terms, by some measure, maybe financially. And some of us, others are barely scratching the level of significance where there's a sense of purpose about what they are called to do, and they are moving in that direction. And of course, when you've acquired knowledge, aim at something, define your vision, because if you don't define a vision, you often be stuck. But if you define your vision, even if you find yourself stuck, you come back to your vision to help you identify what is consistent with that vision that has been identified. And like I said, we need to acquire knowledge. Some of us, especially, I come from, of course, back from Africa. It is almost a cultural thing that we don't read. We don't read at all. We spend our times doing, I'd rather growing up, I'd rather go watch a few movies than to read a book that is put in front of me, even if it's given for nothing. So I'd encourage us to consider these steps, in order to get out, to break through